Floating barrier, water cannons, laser pointing. How should the Philippines respond to these acts of aggression from China? Joining us now is Don McLain Gill, International Studies Lecturer at the De La Salle University. Good evening, Professor. You've seen the report. What else are the Philippines' legal options to stop China's bullying? We've seen many actions such as the water cannon incident, the laser pointing, and then, of course, the Rosal Reef pillaging the seas.
Right. First of all, thank you so much for having me, Lois. It's a true pleasure to be here. Now, in relation to your question, we have to understand it based on two parts, right? What is China's interest in this? And of course, its strategy. And of course, where would we fit ourselves in, being the Philippines, of course. So, this latest issue with the floating borders. This is a continuation of China's broader experiment of how far it can push the Philippines, given the latter's growing ties with the U.S. alliance network and other emerging powers. Of course, now, clearly, this is against our sovereignty and sovereign rights and against international law. But it also illustrates China's greater ambitions for the region. Beijing is now currently seeking to solidify what I call a de facto regional exclusionary policy against Southeast Asian states like the Philippines and extra-regional powers such as the Western powers as well. So hence, the specific barrier development is merely one element in its overarching exclusionary ambitions. The South China Sea, the greater South China Sea, forms a geographic shield for China against the U.S. So it is important for China not only to militarize it, but to solidify its presence. And the Philippines, given its geostrategic position, is a crucial component in this ambition for China. However, recently, China has been faced with challenges, given that Manila has been showing, of course, more determination to stand up for its sovereignty and sovereign rights through multifaceted strategies, which we could probably discuss later on. So Beijing is now faced with a predicament, right, in forwarding its narrowly driven ambitions, but at the same time trying to present itself as a responsible great power based on what it calls the Global Security Initiative. And what Manila is doing now is serving as some sort of hindrance to China's achievement of its narrowly driven ambitions throughout Asia in particular.
Professor, given that kind of strategy that you've seen, you've put everything in a wider perspective, you think then that a legal route would be wise? Is taking China to court again a wise move? Because China never honored the 2016 arbitral ruling in the first place, and it's been 7 years. Experts say there's no military might to enforce the ruling.
Right, and even the code of conduct is pretty much far from being materialized, and that adds to the whole predicament. But however, in relation to our legal processes that we engage in terms of diplomatic protests, that should also be included, but should not be the only strategy that we have to incorporate. So we have to understand that the Philippines of today is not the Philippines of the past few years and decades. We have consistently illustrated our desire to proactively address China's salami slicing. And we have used, of course, a number of strategies besides the traditional strategy. So using international media, overtly upholding UNCLOS in the 2016 ruling, and broadening our security relations with our like-minded partners, and achieving sort of an inching closer to a whole of a nation approach with the PCG at the forefront, and creating more conducive coordinations between the PCG, the Navy, and other crucial institutions. And we have also become more politically mature in drawing the line between accommodating China and securing our interests. But of course, when you talk about what else we can do, all right, the security, the hard defense military activities would be the mid to long-term strategy. But for the short to the mid-term strategy, we must continue our information awareness drive, improve our intelligence sharing with like-minded partners, given that China's salami slicing operates when we are isolated, as we have seen in many instances. And you have to look for more effective trade agreements that would help us decouple from our vast imports from China.
Okay,
it is true that we are not largely dependent on China in its economy, but basically in terms of import. But we are a net importing country, which makes it difficult for us to redirect our imports, particularly because of inflation and the socio-economic costs.
Yeah.
So let us leverage our growing partnerships, right? Let's leverage our growing partnerships to solidify a more proactive trade agreement to help us find alternatives to Chinese imports.
Okay, so there's another route, strengthen trade instead. But it's good that you pointed out that you have to strengthen coordination between agencies, because we've heard the Foreign Affairs Secretary saying today that he's just heard that the Philippine Coast Guard will remove the barrier only from newspapers. He learned that. So isn't that something that should bother you, that the Foreign Affairs Secretary was blindsided somehow?
Well, the Foreign Affairs Secretary is a very steadfast leader, and I have full faith in Secretary Manalo. But of course, this has to be in line with what we are trying to do, what we are trying to achieve. And we are slowly realizing now, under the current administration, the need to enhance cooperation between and among agencies. Of course, this is not an overnight scenario. The most important thing here would be consistency and constant engagements between and among the agencies within the country, the PCG, the Navy, and even other agencies that are not in line with defense, given, of course, that the security threats coming from China are not only hard military in nature. China continues to achieve what it wants to achieve through a number of strategies, unorthodox strategies, through disinformation campaigns, sharp power campaigns. So we must also coordinate with other agencies that are in line with such efforts, right? So we have done a good thing by keeping our international media correspondents on board as well, documenting it, because this comes at a crucial juncture when China is trying to present itself as a responsible global partner in the Middle East. It is also challenging the U.S. influence by trying to broker peace agreements with countries, but even they are also wary of China's role as a security partner because of what it is doing here in the Western Pacific. So of course, along with the hard defense capabilities, that's a mid to long-term issue. China may not even try to use a hard military strategy or shooting war with the US and its allies, because it is also aware of its limitations. It's trying to engage and gain bit by bit without the overt use of military force, without triggering a shooting war. So we must also engage based on that. The short term to mid term, as I've mentioned, will be relying on intelligence sharing, information sharing, broadcasting the information, and trade. China's clout, the economic realm and the defense realm are quite intertwined when it comes to China's power projection. So we have to also make use of our partners, not only for defense-related arrangements, but also economic arrangements. FTAs that would help us lessen our economic dependence on Chinese imports will be crucial, especially as we are facing socio-economic problems as well. So we have to be very multifaceted in our approach with China. Merely a military strategy won't work.
Sure. So the route we could take, we could still pursue the diplomatic route, and of course, strengthening economic ties. We can be still tied in the purse. Is that right?
And that's pretty much it. We have to redirect our economic activities. We are already making so many good friends, so many strong friends. We are broadening the U.S. alliance network. We are decreasing the functional gap of the hub and spoke system.
But that upsets China
India,
all the more. Is that right?
Western Europe.
Us being friends with the U.S. and Australia, Japan, that upsets China all the more.
I mean, any addition or subtraction would definitely affect China, but we have to make it clear, we are on the defensive. We are not provoking the status quo. We are not offending the status quo. We are not offensively engaging. We are keeping the status quo, and we are merely defending what is ours based on international law and not some hearsay, self-imagination. So, of course, everything is in line with our defensive posture, and every state has the right to defend what is theirs based on international law. So, while it may provoke China, we are doing things that are in line and legally speaking in terms of what we have been doing. But of course, political will is also important to carry them out. Every action would have certain reactions from China. I think the PCG spokesperson has also mentioned this earlier. Right. So it is true, but we have to mitigate this, because at the end of the day, President Marcos Jr. said that we have to have negotiations to end this. But China will only listen if there is cost applied. So we have to have level playing field by applying more costs to China, making it feel that it cannot be pushing us around as it pleases. And we have recognized this.
Okay.
We have seen from the
Right.
past administration how accommodation has really not done much towards our sovereignty and sovereign rights. So we are looking to maintain diplomatic channels, but at the same time maximizing our opportunities to address our sovereignty and sovereign rights issues.
So there you have Don McLain Gill, International Studies lecturer at the De La Salle University. Thank you.